Hello and welcome to all the men and women of the West. I'm Joe. Today, well, I'm going to be reading this to you guys. It's about the departure of Margaret, Weis, and Tracy Hickman from TSR back in the day. Now, a lot of the reasons for this have remained fairly contentious and not entirely clear. Now, everyone knew there was a big fight between TSR and the original DL crew, but the article here, which is taken from Ben Riggs' book Slaying the Dragon: A Secret History of Dungeons and Dragons, which I do plan to buy. I highly recommend you all buy this. It goes into everything, and this one of the contributors to this article is Trampus Whiteman, and I will be posting a link to this site and this article in the description. And I highly recommend you check out the Dragonlance Nexus. They have a YouTube channel as well and a podcast. Highly recommend you guys check them out. They are a great channel, great people. They've kept the world of Kryn alive for decades, I believe. Or at least quite a few years, since before I was even doing YouTube videos. Long before that. So without further ado, I'll check this out. And before that, if you're not already, do click the subscribe button. I'm trying to get the channel to 1,000 subs. I know it's getting annoying reminding you guys, but we really need to grow the channel, and then we're going to be able to do a lot more stuff. And not subbing is, well, it's not helping us. I mean, no offense for the guilt trip, but hitting that button will not hurt you. It has not been possessed by Takesis. She can't hurt you if you click it. Actually, Paladin may come out and bless you. So here we go. TSR was a company that discovered geniuses and paid them to create worlds for the rest of us to live in. Yeah, that's very true. The company knew it needed brilliant minds to do this work. It went to great lengths to find creative souls to employ, yet it was less than careful about retaining them. Once these worlds were created, management's attitude seemed to be that these great minds could be replaced with cheap labor. So New York Times best-selling authors and pioneering game designers would be discovered, nurtured, and then allowed to leave the company. It happened to Dave Arneson and Gary Gygax. It was a fate that would also befall Margaret Weis and Tracy Hickman. Weis said that the success of Dragonlance changed my life because it allowed her to leave TSR. Why did Weis want to leave? Her work at the company transformed her from a book editor to a New York Times best-selling author. And why couldn't the company convince her to remain? It had discovered her, groomed her, and marketed her as an author for years. Okay, that just sounded a little wrong with that middle term, groomed. Sorry. Yeah, okay. It just sounded wrong on several levels. The company had a vested financial interest in keeping Weis right where she was, producing Dragonlance novels. Why couldn't it do so? Because they didn't really want to pay her? Sorry, I laugh because it's just, come on, if you have talent, pay your talent. Especially if they're as brilliant as Margaret Weis. You'd think this would be common sense. When I asked Weis why she left, she immediately spoke of Lorraine Williams. She clearly felt that Williams took the company in the wrong direction. She said the creative spirit in the company seemed to die when Gary was gone. He truly cared about D&D. After he was ousted, management seemed to care only about making money, though without any real idea of how to do it. All the while spending money on wasteful projects such as remodeling offices and promoting self-interest such as Buck Rogers. Weis said, I never really interacted a whole lot with Lorraine, but when I did, I really didn't like it. Furthermore, TSR was simply not paying Margaret Weis what she was worth. Weis and Hickman proposed another book series entitled the Dark Sword Trilogy. The books would tell the story of a man born into a world where everyone has magical powers, but he was born without them. The company decided to pass on it. Weis and Hickman then took the Dark Sword Trilogy to Bantam Books. A few weeks passed, and the pair's agent, Ray Puchner, I don't know how it's pronounced, called Weis to say that Bantam wanted to make an offer. Now, real quick, guys, in case you're an author wanting to race over to Bantam Books or Bantam Press or whatever, they're owned by Penguin Press now. So they're not going to take any unsolicited work. I checked. They'll only take you on if you have an agent. So, to all those authors, might want to hold off on getting in your vehicle or getting on the net and racing on over there. Weis said, "Oh wow, that's really cool." Sorry if I can't do her voice. I wish I could, but I can't. Pushner said, "And they want the whole trilogy." Weis said, "Great. And they're going to offer you 30 grand. That's almost 75 grand in today's dollars." Weis was excited by that number. She said, "We'd been getting a pittance from TSR for the novels they'd been writing, so 30K for the trilogy seemed like a great deal of money." Enthused, Weis said to Pushner, 30 grand for 3 books. And Pushner said, no, that's for each book." Weis said, "Oh my gosh." At the time, Weis said that even though she was a best-selling author whose work had helped keep the company afloat during troubled times, she wasn't making 30K a year. Yeah, that's not good. That means she was not making a living wage. That's not good. The company was paying her like a freight handler or entry-level graphic designer. Yeah, which is fairly common because authors get no respect. I'm just being honest. They could create expansive, beautiful worlds like Weis and Hickman, and generally, most companies, both publishing and otherwise, will pay them a pittance because, well, authors will typically work for that much, for that low, because that's the way of things. So, yeah. She called Tracy Hickman to tell him the good news, and that was when they decided to leave the company. The capitalist calculus of it all was brutal and swift. Bantam was offering them more than their annual salary per novel. It was more money for less work. Who wouldn't take that offer? Success at TSR meant that Weis and Hickman could leave TSR. When artist Larry Elmore heard that Weis and Hickman would be departing to write fantasy novels for Bantam, he wanted a piece of the action. Could they get him the job of painting the cover of the first novel? It is worth noting that to the artists working in Lake Geneva, painting fantasy covers for the New York publishing houses was seen as the big time. Doing their novel cover for would be a real step up in terms of prestige for Elmore. The publication of a book by Bantam was a similar step up for Weis and Hickman, and when she responded to Elmore's request, sorry about that, she had skyscrapers and Times Squares goggling her eyes. She said, "I don't know, Larry. This is a big New York publisher," but she wouldn't forget his request. Later, the pair were flown to New York by Bantam. There in the city where shining towers touch the skies and the subway trains rumble like dragons in their dens, the bigwigs at Bantam took them out for lunch. Margaret Weis of Independence, Missouri, was meeting with a major publisher in a city so absolute and grand and final that on the East Coast you can simply say, "this city," and everyone knows you're talking about New York. She described her emotional state at that moment, on the day she was taken out for lunch in New York City with a single syllable of onomatopoeia. Woo! But despite the majesty of her surroundings and the corresponding majesty of the bigwigs taking her out for lunch, she didn't forget Larry Elmore, who was stuck back in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, painting in the former Q-tip factory on Sheridan Springs Road. But the skyscrapers and the food and the suits, what would the bigwigs say about Larry Elmore? Would they say they never heard of him? Would they laugh at her for being a mid-country rube to think that her friend who painted elves and dragons in outstate Wisconsin could make the grade in New York City? Weis recalled that with fear and trepidation. I said, you know, if it would be at all possible, Larry Elmore would really love to do the cover. One of the bigwigs replied, "Oh my God, we were going to ask you if there was any way you could get Larry Elmore to do the cover." Elmore was hired, and not long after, he left the company as well. Smart man. So the three core OG DL creators left. And I include Elmore only because he did a lot of the art. And a lot of people underestimate the importance that visual art has on the selling of a story or just overall. It's a lot of work, and artists are also frequently underpaid. It's a matter, I think, when it comes to authors and artists, that there are too many of us. And that's why the employers have the power, so to speak, and because there's no union and whatnot. So that's also, those are also reasons for why they work for pittances. Not to mention, the industry kind of gatekeeps out a lot of authors. There are multiple reasons for this. Some are legitimate, some aren't. And I myself have been unable to find a publisher. Although, thankfully, I now have an agent. So hopefully it won't be too long before I hear back on that front. That said, it sounds like Weis kind of did a bit of a literary or artistic agent's job here for Elmore, and it'd be great to get his side of the story as well. I wonder if I could get him on the channel at some point. It'd be fascinating to talk to an artist like him. I think it's Phillips. It is, who did the Dragons of Deceit art. He's very talented. Seriously, check out his site. He's amazing. Now, let's see. The Dark Sword trilogy was published by Bantam in 1988, along with a role-playing game called Dark Sword Adventures. Each had a cover by Larry Elmore. One can see in these books the outline of the product that might have been if it had been picked up by TSR. Clearly, a trilogy of novels would have been written, along with a series of adventures set in the world. But it was not to be. Weis and Hickman were gone. Yet, as was so often the case, TSR was not done with them. Oh, dear Lord. Come on, let them go. You treated them like garbage for years. Years passed. Weis and Hickman went on to write another trilogy entitled Rose of the Prophet, again published by Bantam, again with covers by Larry Elmore, but set in a fantastic ideation of the Middle East, with sheikhs and jinns and a pantheon of 20 gods. Okay, that actually sounds really interesting. I'll have to pick it up, especially since it's written by Weis and Hickman. Weis doesn't remember at what convention or in what year Loanne Williams threatened to sue her, but it was definitely at a convention. It wasn't Gen Con. Of that much she was certain, but it was at a convention. Loanne was there. Weis was in the middle of a conversation when Williams appeared. She had a simple message to convey. She was considering suing her and Hickman over Rose of the Prophet. What? She believed that the pair had worked on material for the trilogy while at TSR. If so, it was company property under their contracts, and she had standing to sue. With that, like a bad dream, Williams was gone. If she had threatened to sue over the Dark Sword trilogy, it would at least have made sense. The Dark Sword trilogy was obviously developed while the pair had been at TSR. Okay, just a note, I just remembered. The Dark Sword trilogy, given a world full of magic, main character without magic, really reminds me of Saga Frontier 2, where you have a magically potent royal family, but then you get the main character who has no magic, Gustav the Steel. And he, of course, rediscovers steel and iron after it's been lost for decades, I believe. Or centuries, I mean. And, you know, it's a really fascinating game, and I wonder if it drew inspiration from the Dark Sword trilogy. There's a lot of video games that drew inspiration from a lot of Weis and Hickman's work, because they did a lot of pioneering. If you look at Dragon Age, it's entirely inspired by Dragonlance. And you could tell, given the characters and the way they behave and whatnot. I'm not trying to diminish Dragon Age. Actually, I really love that universe, but I find it, you can see the parallels. Now, where was I? The company, after all, had turned the project down. The acceptance of the trilogy by Bantam and their commensurate pay raise was the reason the pair had left. The idea that Williams and her baying pack of lawyers could have found any hard, tangible proof that the pair had worked on Rose of the Prophet at the company years after they had left was at best unlikely. Furthermore, given the pair's talents and proven sales track record, she should have been trying to woo them back by hook, crook, love, or money. Instead, she was haunting them at conventions to make illogical threats of legal action. That was likely to irritate Weis and Hickman, not win them back into the fold. And from the point of view of the bottom line, that was the winning move here. Get them back writing Dragonlance. After all, the pair were still making money for the company, selling tens of thousands of copies of their novels every year. Yeah, like, you know, Briggs, was it? I'm just going to scroll back up just to... Riggs. Ben Riggs nailed it there. Dear heavens. You'd... You know, like... Sadly, there's a lot of companies that seem to operate like this. Just, they have untold amounts of pettiness, and you see them treat their creatives and their talents of all sorts like garbage. And, you know, they get angry when the talent goes elsewhere or whatnot. Now, decades ago, Don Bluth ended up having a falling out with Disney, and there was similar conflict. And he took a number of the creatives of Disney out to create Don Bluth Studios and whatnot. And in the 80s, kicked Disney's tail. And although in the 90s, he didn't do as much work and sold out to 20th Century Fox, I believe, whereupon he ended up pumping out magnificent works such as, in my opinion, Titans AE, and of course, Anastasia. So this goes hand in hand in the animation industry, video games. It seems to happen everywhere. Now that I think about it, it'd be interesting to see Weis and Hickman write an animated work or a video game or something. That'd be interesting. For their part, neither Weis nor Hickman took the threat to heart. She said, "It didn't mean a whole lot. We actually thought it was just kind of funny. Yet to approach the pair of them at a convention to threaten a lawsuit seemed so excessively aggressive. Why would the CEO of a multi-million-dollar company do that?" Weis said, "You had to know, Lorraine. The break between TSR and Weis and Hickman seemed complete. Why would the pair ever come back while she was casually threatening frivolous lawsuits against them?" Yeah, although I don't know if they felt it was frivolous. It is worth pausing for a moment to measure the caliber of disaster that the departure of Weis and Hickman represented. You couldn't swing a Vorpal sword in the company offices without beheading a genius. Every department was thick with them. Women and men whose minds sparkled like obsidian in firelight. Seriously, Ben Riggs, write a novel. Jeez, your prose is great here. Given the success of Dragonlance, Weis and Hickman were certainly geniuses. Oh yeah. But I believe I have interviewed dozens of company alumni that I would rank as creative geniuses for this book. So curiously, the quality that might make Weis and Hickman stand out against the general populace was not what made them stand out at the company. They were, there is no word for it, stars. Perhaps the first the company produced after Gygax himself. They had fanatical devotees who knew their names. Even if in confusion, they misgendered Tracy Hickman. Oh yeah, I remember doing that as a teen. I did that. I thought he was a she for a time. And that, I don't know, because he's always got his pictures with Laura and Hickman, and I always ended up thinking that the blonde lady was Tracy. So, and I had no idea Laura Hickman even existed. But yeah, that was a mistake I once made. Sorry, I'm having fun here. I'm enjoying this. Man, I gotta pick up this book. I gotta pick up this book. I love D&D. in fantasy. There were okay, I already read that. The company sold 14 million copies of Dragonlance novels, settings, and adventures by 1997. Ooh. At conventions, people would crowd their table for autographs. For years at Gen Con, Tracy Hickman hosted 2-hour sessions of what he called Killer Breakfast. Fans came up on stage with D&D characters, and Hickman killed them off as amusingly as possible, sometimes dispatching up to 200 in a go. Wow. Other fans have taken their books to war with them. One wounded veteran returned from Afghanistan and gifted the pair his Bronze Star and Purple Heart, saying they deserved them because the Dragonlance novels helped him earn those medals. Okay, that's just beautiful. Like, oh wow. I hope that veteran's still alive today. Wow. I didn't know that happened. Okay. Wow. I'm gonna have to note that down later. Because if I ever interview Weis or Hickman, I have to ask them about it. That, wow. Sorry. That is not something, as a reader, you read lightly. Huh. I knew Dragonlance had transformed my life, and that Weis and Hickman and N.e.r.d's work had saved me from 2 suicide attempts, but this, I didn't know. I had no idea. This is just, that's beautiful. Honestly, that's just beautiful. That they helped save a veteran like that. And a hero, a war hero, that's, yeah. Anyways, to call the people faithful to the works of Weis and Hickman a fan base is to damn with faint praise. The pair reached out with their words and touched something elemental and profound within their readers. Well, yeah, they arguably wrote the best fantasy stories since Tolkien and Howard. And that's not me, I think, overblowing them. They genuinely created the best stories since those guys, them and N.e.r.d. And I put N.e.r.d. at their level because of my passion for Legend of Huma. And yeah, they certainly touch something elemental in a lot of us. Yet, TSR seemed to believe that sort of allegiance from an audience could be replaced. Ha! It acted on a theory of interchangeable creativity, as though a novel or adventure would sell equally well, irrespective of who produced it. Writers were machines that made words to sell. Other machines would make words if they would not. Acting on this theory set a pattern that would recur again and again during the Williams era. The company would discover and support talent. That talent would mature, make amazing products, then leave, often due to low pay or perceived disrespect. Once Weis and Hickman were gone, along came a crisis. What fantasy setting would replace Dragonlance, and what author would replace them? The very fact that they asked those questions is just ridiculous and shows the height of stupidity in the company at the time. The reason I say that is the trouble is that you can't replace talent like theirs or a fantasy universe like Dragonlance. Now, you may like Greyhawk, you may like Forgotten Realms or whatnot better, but for me, I just think Dragonlance is the pinnacle and the best that not just Weis and Hickman or N.e.r.d. or whatever are likely to ever write in, although N.e.r.d.'s other work, along with Weis and Hickman's other work, do look very tempting. I'm probably gonna have to check them out, maybe even do videos on their other stuff. But also on the part of the D&D company, I mean, they haven't released a Dragonlance book in how long, and you know, they've tried to replace it with their other stuff, but it just hasn't gone that way. Now I'm just gonna highlight Dragonhelm here. He's best known for co-creating and administering the Dragonlance Nexus fan site. He is a co-author of 3 Dragonlance books: Holy Orders of the Stars, Knightly Orders of Ancelon, and Races of Ancelon. I didn't know these. I have Races of Ancelon. I really love it. When not evangelizing Dragonlance in other settings, Trampus is a husband, father, podcaster, and web designer. Now, I knew he was a podcaster and web designer. Trampus also enjoys reading comics, in reading fantasy and sci-fi novels, and playing D&D. Okay, now I just read this section to highlight to you guys Trampus Whiteman Dragonhelm, to highlight his own contributions, which are very considerable, far more than my own could ever be. What a remarkable man. Honestly, this is just wow. This was a beautiful article, and I'm glad Ben Riggs was kind enough to provide an excerpt from his book, his documentary about the departure of, well, Dungeons and Dragons, and the part with Weis and Hickman. I'm actually just going to see if this takes me to the Amazon link. Oh, it takes me to his website. Let's check Amazon. Actually, let me check the other sites. Okay. Let me see the price on this thing. Seems reasonably priced. Okay. So do buy yourselves a copy. Slaying the Dragon. And don't forget to... I would also recommend people pre-order Dragons of Deceit, because let's support Weis and Hickman, because they're awesome. And let me know in the comments section what you thought of this video, of my thoughts on this excerpt. And once again, do subscribe. It's not going to hurt you. Smash that subscribe button as though you were Kitiara smashing through the High Claire's tower.